right here where I stand, I see through 2027 at least $1 trillion.
Jensen Huang just declared Nvidia will hit $1 trillion in revenue, and then told you that number is too low. There are 3 reasons why he's certain, and why every holder needs to understand them before this story plays out. So let's start with reason number 1, and it begins with the number itself. $1 trillion in cumulative revenue through 2027. It's exactly double what Jensen told investors just 6 months ago at their last major event.
At least $1 trillion in cumulative revenue through 2027, which was double the previous figure that we got back in October at their GTC DC.
Double. In 6 months. That's the pace at which Jensen is revising his own numbers upward, and the reason he can say this with such certainty comes down to something very specific that happened in 2025. Something that permanently changed the demand equation for artificial intelligence infrastructure.
So the first thing is, we did a lot of work in the last year. Of course, as you know, 2025 was Nvidia's year of inference.
Here's what inference actually means, and why it changes everything. For years, the artificial intelligence story was about training. Companies like OpenAI, Google, and Meta spent billions teaching artificial intelligence models everything they know. That was the first wave. Nvidia's chips powered every single dollar of it. But training ends. You build the model, you train it, and eventually that wave of spending slows down. The concern was always, what happens after training? That's what kept some investors nervous about Nvidia's long-term revenue story.
We wanted to make sure that not only were we good at training and post-training, that we were incredibly good at every single phase of AI, so that the investments that were made, investments made in our infrastructure, could scale out for as long as they would like to use it.
Jensen saw that concern coming and spent an entire year solving it, because inference is the answer. Inference is what happens every single time someone uses an artificial intelligence product. Every ChatGPT response, every Google Gemini query, every artificial intelligence agent running inside a company's software. A chip fires in a data center to make that happen. And unlike training, inference never stops. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the demand grows every single month as more people use more artificial intelligence tools. That's reason number 1. The demand is now structural and permanent. Artificial intelligence has crossed from learning into working. And that means every chip Nvidia sells today keeps generating demand for the next one. Jensen didn't stumble into this. He built for it a full year before anyone else understood the shift. Now here's where the story gets complicated. Because if the demand picture is this strong, why did the stock lose $150 billion in market cap in 10 minutes after one of the greatest announcements in corporate history?
Nvidia lost roughly $150 billion in market cap in just the span of about 10 minutes as enthusiasm just faded.
The answer comes down to expectations. Wall Street had already been modeling close to $1 trillion, so when Jensen confirmed the number, the general market didn't see a surprise. They saw confirmation of what they had already priced in, and when a stock this size delivers confirmation instead of a shock to the upside, investors immediately ask, where does the next leg of growth come from? When they couldn't find a fast answer, they sold.
The problem is that $1 trillion isn't that far from where Wall Street already was, so the new number barely moves the needle.
But here's what the general market completely missed. The $150 billion drop is not a warning, it's a disconnect. Because the specialists, the analysts who have spent years building models specifically around this company, didn't run. They stepped in. And the reason they stepped in is the same reason Jensen is so certain about the $1 trillion number in the first place. No competitor on earth can touch what Nvidia has built.
Open source models. Open source models have reached near the frontier, and it is literally everywhere. And Nvidia, as you know, today, we're the only platform in the world today that runs every single domain of AI.
The only platform in the world that runs every single domain of artificial intelligence. That's not a marketing line. That's a structural advantage that took a decade to build. And JP Morgan made exactly this point when the general market was selling.
JP Morgan, though, pushing back, though, saying Nvidia's platform, now spanning 7 chips and 5 rack systems with the software to tie them all together, is just simply too difficult for any competitor to replicate.
7 chips, 5 rack systems, software tying all of it together into one unified platform. No competitor on earth can replicate this. That's reason number 2. The $1 trillion isn't just a forecast. It's backed by a platform so deeply embedded in every layer of artificial intelligence infrastructure that switching away from it would cost customers more than it would ever save them. That's not a cyclical trade. That's a structural lock-in. And the general market, focused on the short-term price reaction, missed it entirely. We're halfway through. You now know why the inference inflection makes demand permanent, and why the platform moat makes that demand durable. But we still haven't covered the most important reason, the one that tells you exactly why $1 trillion is the starting point and not the finish line. Here's what almost nobody picked up on during the keynote. The $1 trillion figure Jensen announced only captures what is already committed. It reflects the Blackwell infrastructure build-out already in motion. But the demand story stretches far beyond the hyperscalers, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, who have been the main buyers up until now.
And with demand broadening beyond hyperscalers into sovereign AI, enterprises, industrial customers, the cycle is more durable than the market is actually giving it credit for.
Sovereign artificial intelligence, enterprise systems, industrial deployments, 3 entirely separate demand drivers that are not yet fully reflected in that $1 trillion number. And each of these categories is in the early stages of its own build-out cycle. Customers who are building infrastructure they will run, expand, and upgrade for years. Jensen made clear he already sees all of it coming. Short.
Now, does it make any sense? And that's what I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about. In fact, we are going to be short.
His own $1 trillion forecast is going to fall short of actual demand. The most precise CEO in the semiconductor industry, a man who has called every major artificial intelligence inflection correctly, is telling you publicly that the biggest revenue forecast in corporate history still isn't big enough.
You have to have complete confidence that the $1 trillion you're putting down will be utilized, would be performant, would be incredibly cost effective, and have useful life for as long as you could see.
$1 trillion of infrastructure investment requires complete confidence in the platform you're building on. And Jensen's point is that Nvidia is now the only platform that provides that confidence at every level of the stack, across every type of artificial intelligence workload. That's reason number 3. The $1 trillion only counts what has already been decided. Sovereign artificial intelligence, enterprise, and industrial. That's an entirely separate wave of demand that hasn't even been fully priced in yet. And it's coming. So where does all of this leave Nvidia holders right now? The general market is skeptical, the stock is stuck in a range, and the $150 billion sell-off after the biggest revenue declaration in Nvidia's history tells you exactly how much confusion exists right now. But as a holder, confusion in the general market is not your enemy, it's your advantage. Because while the general market is questioning the number, the people who understand this business best are telling you something very different.
I mean, we heard even Stacey Rasgon, who's been, skeptical before. He loved what he heard and said that he doesn't think the stock can get much cheaper.
Stacey Rasgon has been one of the most critical voices covering Nvidia for years. When even he says the stock can't get much cheaper, that carries real weight.
Morgan Stanley's Joe Moore calling the sell-off an attractive entry point right now and keeping Nvidia as his top pick in semis, saying the market will eventually get more comfortable with this 2027 growth number